guys, welcome back to Cyberspace Investigations. A while back I talked about Genshin Impact, a free-to-play gacha game released for PC, PS4, and mobile simultaneously. I played it for a while, about 50 hours, but after that I fell off due to some bosses I couldn't beat. But now I've returned because of the first map update, Dragonspine. Let's talk about it. Let's cover the new stuff first. There have been a bunch of character introductions since I last played in both version 1.1 and the current 1.2. A ton of new story content and side stories have been added as well, fleshing out the world a great deal. I applaud the devs for making so much content so quick, especially for an open world game like this. This is how a live service should be done. No new areas came with the 1.1 update, rather focusing on new characters, new story, and balancing the game that was already there. It introduced more Archon quests, which is the main storyline, as well as multiple character-based quest lines as well. With the 1.2, no new Archon quests have been introduced, rather 2 new story quests and the new area. I think it's a fair trade-off. I mean, the Archon story has to end at some point, so I think slow-rolling it is a good idea. I've already completed the first act of one of these questlines, focused around the new character Albedo, and as one of the first new questlines I've done that weren't included in the base game, I'd say it's quite intriguing. It's certainly got some more interesting parts than the world quests you can encounter on your own in the world, and the fact that it's longer like this makes for some actual character building. None of this is stuff I would or should expect from a free-to-play game, let alone a gacha game, and yet here we are again. It seems that this game's quality rises with each passing update. With the update comes the new area Dragonspine. It's a huge mountain, but not the first area I figure would be added. I was pleasantly surprised when I booted up the game for the first time in months to see the mountain I had tried to get to before actually accessible. I haven't explored all of it just yet, no access to the peak I'm afraid. However, from what I've experienced so far, I can say that this is a very intricate, uniquely designed area and takes principles in the design of Mondstadt and applies them very gracefully to a mountain the size of one you would see in Liyue. The changes of scenery is very nice. A lot of time is spent running through green fields or slightly brown green fields, so having such a drastic shift in terms of coloring, design, and look makes for a very nice addition to the world. The look of the new area when on the map screen was a bit of an eyesore at first, but I warmed up to it quickly. It rounds out Mondstadt as having 4 areas, similar to Liyue now, and makes the world size much more comparable, especially when given the amount of world that lives underneath the mountain, almost as much as the surface. The underside I just mentioned is a massive cavern dotted with enemies, as well as many narrow bridges that go up and down the deep cave. There's tons of new enemy types, mostly ice-themed given the climate of Dragonspine. New mini-bosses can be found around the map, and a good pyro character is needed to defeat them, otherwise it's going to be a more tricky ride. The enemies themselves are a little on the tough side, being on the upper echelon of levels seen in the world. You'll actually need some different characters than the ones you've possibly been using, as ice enemies rarely appear in other areas, but are quite abundant on the mountain. It's a very nice change of pace, and some of the tricks and combos I would have used on other enemies don't work on those in Dragonspine. It makes it a lot more challenging to fight up there, with added challenge coming from the new enemies appearing in the area. I can't replicate my surprise when I first saw these gunslinging fat guys. These enemies are much more difficult to defeat than anything I've encountered thus far, even more challenging than the bosses I've beaten. It adds a layer of tension along with the newest gameplay mechanic added with the area, sheer cold. It's this thing that happens only in Dragonspine that acts in a similar way to hypothermia in Breath of the Wild, however it's always increasing and there's only a few foods that can slow its effects. Once it reaches full, it takes massive chunks of health away very fast, so in that regard it's much less forgiving than Breath of the Wild's hypothermia, however the hypothermia sets in right away, whereas sheer cold takes a while to fully accumulate. Some unique weather effects in the mountain allow for even more tension with the sheer cold. The way you get it off is by standing by either a fast travel point or a source of fire. In long battles, these are essential for staying alive, and because some attacks kill the flames, part of battles in the area is keeping the flames alive, which makes a character like Amber very useful for having direct access to fire, rather than somebody like Zhongling where you have to aim the fire. It's a nice balance and shows that the devs have the versatility to create new ways of fighting with only a few slight changes. Since I stopped playing, the generous compensations and reward amounts have stayed, and it's given me a chance to look at the amount of premium currency you get while not constantly getting showered with them during the early game phase. I've managed in about 10 hours to get back the amount of Prima Gems I had before using it all on rolls before I stopped playing. That's a fairly nice thing, though I believe some new rewards I got automatically added to that total. It's quite generous, and I think the free-to-play aspect has not encroached farther into the experience. One thing I'm noticing more that hasn't improved is the original resin situation. Some older things and events don't require resin to do anymore, but if you're trying to grind bosses and get weapon and character ascension materials at the same time, be prepared to shell out some Prima Gems if you want to do it in a more efficient manner. It's just the free-to-play nature of the game coming out, so I think while there is some valid criticism for the system, people need to understand that they really aren't owed a better system. However, I do have to agree that the system needs to be reworked a little bit, and at the very least, don't put a limit on refills. From the perspective of a returning player, the map additions and story additions to Genshin Impact have made the game much better than it was when I first left. I think there's a lot more to do now, a lot more to experience, and a lot more to love overall. It makes me very excited for the future, and because this game has now made over $400 million, it's obvious that there is no stopping the roll of content for this game. So the only question is, what's gonna come next? What new great thing are they gonna add in the next area? I'm excited to find out, and I can't wait to see. Well, that's all I've got for this one, so see you next week for another great program.